Wanted to share one idea that we had. This was the preparing for the DPCP MLE, working together with Kate and James and Hoken and myself. We went around and around. There were some great ideas, and I think at one point we kind of diverged just a little bit, and so I thought it was worth sharing this version of a plan for the guide. It's very similar to another version that one of our group members will share, but I'm not able to join the meeting, so just wanted to share this and let people see it if they had a chance. The idea for this iteration or this version of our preparing for the DPCP MLE was based around a complex competency approach. And so, excuse me, so the complex competency or competency is the idea that it's not just knowledge, it's not just skills, it's not just attitudes and values, it's a combination of those things. And that competencies are basically packages, right, of these different components, and they're tied to action and transfer, right? So we kind of viewed, or this iteration views this course through what you might say a competency-based lens or framework. The idea was, and this is, yeah, there are slightly different versions of this in another draft in the folder. That basically there were kind of four main areas, or four areas that we kind of centered on, or that bubbled up right through our conversations and our work and our revisions. And this little model kind of highlights some of those, those four areas, right? So highlighted, the first one is well-being, and so that's the dark circle in this diagram, right? And it's intentionally kind of surrounding all of these other areas because one idea might be that it underlies a lot of the other progressions, in terms of competencies. At the center of the model, right, is an IB learner, and we all recognize, I think, the role that the IB profile attributes play as basically competency definitions of what holistic development looks like, or is aimed at, right, through an IB lens. Also picking up some things that were shared previously by curriculum leaders at IB was this idea of engagement and flourishing as being kind of central to the concept of transformative education. And so the student, right, the person, the development of a person is at the center there, and then also to highlight that students exist in unique learning contexts, right? So the four kind of areas, the first one we mentioned was well-being, and the second were ATL skills. And so the third and fourth were international mindedness, right? And its ties to global competency, global engagement, intercultural understanding, all of those kind of typical international mindedness aspects. And then also the idea of ethics and integrity. And this was mainly spurred through discussions about how AI perhaps and academic integrity might be built in or prepared for in the course, right? So in this kind of model, we're seeing these as the four kind of competency areas for the course. And the idea with the arrows going back and forth is that they are connected, mutually connected, right? You're going to be developing ATL skills through explorations or development of international mindedness, and likewise for ethics and integrity. So that's kind of the framework for this iteration or this version or this idea for the preparing for the DPCP module. We definitely were inspired by some, I think it was the Digital Society, some of Joel's and team's work, and this idea that inquiries in this module, like in that subject, could be supported by explicit recognition of concepts, context, and content. And so the concepts in this idea perhaps are basically those four kind of competency areas. And I know that there's it's getting a bit confusing. Is it a concept? Is it a competency? Is it that kind of thing? Is it a skill? But the concept of well-being, I think, or the concept of holistic development, right? The concept of international mindedness, the concept of integrity and ethics. I think that those are recognizable, right, and could clearly be tied to meaningful inquiries. In terms of context, we're thinking, or the idea with this iteration or this version, is that that is for this MLE, the context is the student's learning environment, right? So, and that includes the student, I guess, as well. So students as individuals, their school systems, whether they're national or international, the country that they're in, right, and all of those kind of like ecosystem elements, and then the content, right, would be specific tools, strategies, approaches, applications, right, that would help students develop in terms of those competency areas. So that's kind of this framework adapted from the Digital Society's subject guide. In terms of aims, right, it was essentially kind of thought to be like a stepping stone course. Give students, I think James described it as like a bump, right? Before they go into the DP, regardless of, or the CP, regardless of where they were coming from. Also wanted to add, kind of broaden this idea that the DPCP is not just about academics. And when we think of success, we have to, or an idea with this is to make sure that success is not measured purely in terms of grades, right? And that we are recognizing holistic development and those kind of aspects, right? So again, kind of adapting a version of a figure from the Digital Society's subject guide, imagining the process for student learning in the course, competency-based progression kind of thing, involving this process of focusing, right? So those real-world contexts, right? I need to uh, understand someone else's culture. I need to communicate with someone who's maybe of a different culture. I need to apply, approaches to learning skills for a particular purpose, all sorts of those different things. And then the idea is that various tools, approaches, and experiences, right, are provided for students through the course that they are asked to apply, one or more of those, and then basically reflect on the success in terms of achieving the competency or a mastery level of competency. So we imagine, right, that the design for the course is amenable to schools' unique needs. So a school might have perhaps certain things that it wanted to value, areas that it found that it needed to focus on, and then that also might be specific to students, right? So a student, right, might recognize or might be guided to recognize that a certain approaches to learning skill area, one of these was what they really needed to focus on. So the idea from James and Hoken and Kate was that there are kind of a core foundational unit that is it's pretty short, and it's basically kind of a lay of the land thing where you introduce things like approaches to learning skills and well-being, right? And then we were calling that kind of part 1A, and then part 1B, the idea was, and this is I guess just a proposal, right, given maybe the number of hours and things, that students either select themselves or through collaboration with mentors, or the school maybe identifies one of these areas that they select a subset of those units to focus on. And after they've gone through those 5, in this case, maybe 5 out of the 8 units, then they're involved in some creation of some authentic project. And it was imagined perhaps that's some kind of support guide for them to help them apply the competency development or the competency throughout the remainder of their DP or CP experience, right? So again, the idea is that this could be taken kind of before, it could be taken maybe in the first semester, in the first year, but it's really leading towards an authentic product that is meaningful to the student and related to the competency areas. So you can see the kind of, these were proposed by Kate and James and Hoken and others. Here's the kind of introductory unit, right? Students, and again, this would also perhaps be adaptable, right? So, if you were in an MYP school and, you already fully had a lot of experience with criteria-based assessment, maybe you'd pull back from that a bit. If you were at a national school or something, you might have other priorities. So that was kind of the imagined list of topics, right, for Part 1A. Part 1B, this is basically just a table showing the different options of those 8 units that students would select either by themselves or with the guidance of a mentor, or perhaps maybe a school recognized that it wanted students to focus on well-being or international mindedness or integrity and ethics. So just the red here is just to indicate that those are like single units, whereas the ATL is a collection of 5 different units, right? That students would or schools or mentors or together collaboratively choose one of these, a total of 5, right? But choose a subset of these to focus on. So thinking kind of like, around that for those first 5 units. And then the idea is that this is a portfolio-based assessment that draws on some tools and techniques for competency-based assessment. Part 2, this is really Kate's genius, right? This idea of having students create this kind of authentic, we call it a study guide, but it's not really a study guide, but maybe a tool, right? A guide that would help them remember, apply, be reminded of, right, those different competency areas that they had focused on and hopefully gotten close to mastery. So to dive just a little bit deeper into the kind of approach in a competency-based framework, some of the things that we read about, one was Melbourne Metrics that has a really interesting approach to this, and this would be for formative feedback, right? So let's say a student identified thinking skills or whatever the case might be. Those experiences would be, or students would use set targets, right? Reflect with a very specific rubric that would support that particular competency area, right? A teacher would perhaps review their evidence, their reflection, and even through a meeting or something like that, reflect on the same rubric basically, and then together, right? The student and the teacher or the mentor assessment, right, would be put together to build some meaningful feedback steps in terms of supporting growth, right? So this is kind of the formative assessment approach. This is another kind of diagram showing the idea of how assessment would progress through Part 1, which is the digital portfolio, right? These cycles of evidence and reflection, supported by rubrics, and then this final in Part 2, right? This, it's a project basically, right? But it's an authentic, building something authentic that will help the student throughout the remainder of their DP or CP experience, right? Maintain or get very close to mastery, right? For that particular competency area. So you can have a look at this if you're interested, but these were some of the outcomes that were developed for the different units. This definitely, I think these areas are better kind of clarified in the draft that Kate uploaded. These are the different units. There's a little bit of information on the competency-based approach. I think it was well developed for the unit on international mindedness, right? And this is coming from, or at least really great examples, the Global Citizenship Diploma. And so they have very clear rubrics. They have clear kind of guidance, right, to help a student or a teacher, both actually, right, to understand that competency area, right? Understand like kind of the look-fors, right, that would help students progress. And so, what is exciting for me about this is perhaps taking kind of this competency-based approach across a variety of different areas, right? So ethics and integrity, the different ATL skill areas, international mindedness, right? Making it something that is less maybe hate to say, but like token in some cases, right? The same could be said for well-being, and kind of the thing that is, I think, the competency-based kind of approach really supports the idea of teachers actually giving specific, actionable, meaningful feedback together with the student, right? Such that they're actually making progress towards achieving mastery. So, yeah, just wanted to upload that. There is another really awesome, amazing version of a slightly different version of this that Kate uploaded, which is awesome. But just wanted to make sure that had a short opportunity to share a bit about this slightly divergent kind of vision of this, right? Thanks all.